in some ways there were two Martin Bryants. That one of the Martins was kind of a giggling, silly, inane and not very intelligent person. But then I spoke to other people in prison who said they used to play chess with him. I'll call that person Nigel. And Nigel said he wasn't an easy beat. So someone who knows how to play chess is not exactly unintelligent. Welcome to the WASP Files. Some of this material may be distressing and viewer discretion is advised. I've read all of the medical reports relating to Martin Bryant's mental state and his level of intelligence, including some that was sent to me when he was diagnosed inside Risdon Prison. All of this material will be available for free download. It's generally regarded that Martin had a low IQ, somewhere in the vicinity of 66, which gives him the intelligence of an 11-year-old child. Now, in terms of being able to hold a rifle and fire the rifle, you don't need to be super intelligent to do that. But when you consider the extent of the crime scene, the multiply staged and planned locations where all of the shootings took place, then you have to think a little bit more carefully about how someone with a diminished IQ and a very antisocial way of functioning could have accomplished such a task on their own. So just to briefly summarise the crime scene, there were, if you like, a trail of breadcrumbs where Martin was spotted on the way, supposedly, to Port Arthur, where he stopped at a supermarket, stopped at a service station, stopped to help two people by the side of the road, stopped to see Roger Lana, and basically acted in such a way that people noticed that there was this person. Then the shooting took place at the Port Arthur tourist colony in the Broad Arrow Cafe, where a lot of victims lost their lives. From there, the shooting transported down towards where the buses were parked, and then the shooter got into their car and drove up to the toll gate exit where there was further shooting and confiscation of another vehicle. That vehicle was then transported to another service station where there was another shooting and a innocent person was kidnapped and put in the boot of the stolen vehicle. And then the final stage of the event was at Seascape Cottage, which was a siege that took place well into the night. So you've got multiple locations where this shooting took place. To be able to set up each of those locations in such a way as to create maximum damage and to be able to utilise the firearms in such a way to cause such a high number of casualties is remarkable. In Seascape alone, there were more than just a few firearms. There was reports by a young man who came into the police station during the shooting and who stated that there were 43 guns at Seascape and, quote, shitloads of ammo, mate. That person, I believe, was Glenn Martin, the son of David and Sally. So there was some notion that Glenn was a shooter, that he had guns, and that he used to buy 7.62 by 39 SKS ammunition by the carton and shoot beer cans off his boat in the bay. Given that Seascape was an Airbnb run by his mother and father, it's unusual to consider that there might be that many guns at Seascape Cottage. I believe on the police report they had recovered 17 burnt firearms in the wreckage, including the AR-15 and the FN 308 that we used. So prior to then, there was some very complicated setups where the shooter managed very successfully to kill a lot of people, to be able to commandeer a vehicle, to be able to make it to unimpeded, unarrested, to other locations where he could inflict even more damage. There was also the notion that the only two officers that were close enough to Port Arthur at the time were decoyed away from Port Arthur by a caller who stated that there was some drugs that were in a cave on the other side of the island. So the two police officers raced across to the other side of the island to find a jar of soap powder. While they were over there, the shooting took place down at Port Arthur. So the two police officers were lured away, which is very smart for someone who's got an IQ of 66. So I guess the success of the event, ability to be able to use firearms notwithstanding, which Martin certainly could do, certainly questions the level of intelligence of the shooter. It's just an astounding, the breadth of the crime itself and the way it was carried out and pre-planned seems to suggest that there was either a higher intelligence or there were other people involved. I've spoken to certain people regarding Martin who stated that in some ways there were two Martin Bryants, that one of the Martins was kind of a giggling, silly, inane and not very intelligent person. People in prison told me, quote, we used to, if we threw a ball at him, he wouldn't know how to catch it. But then I spoke to other people in prison who said they used to play chess with him. I'll call that person Nigel. And Nigel said he wasn't an easy beat. So someone who knows how to play chess is not exactly unintelligent. Phil Pike, who guarded Martin in hospital after he was transported there from being burnt in the cottage. I spoke to him at length. He made copious notes about his interactions with Martin Bryant, which he will not share and has not shared to this day. And I asked him, I said, was there any indication that Martin was intelligent and coldly calculating? And he said, you're the first person that's ever asked me that. And I would say that's the case. That on the one hand, he was this giggling kind of, can I get a glass of water? I need to go to the toilet. And then he would look up and Martin would be staring at him very coldly in the dark. And Phil Pike responded and showed Martin his firearm in his holster and tapped it and said, you see this, Martin, if you get out of those handcuffs, this is for you. Some people shoot back. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that he was intelligent, but it did seem to show a different side to Martin Bryant. He does seem to be a bit of an enigma, but we'll cover that later on. But as to his intelligence to carry out something as atrocious as Port Arthur, I think there's a lot of questions about that. It would take a lot of pre-planning and a lot of thought. I'll finish off by saying that an unusual aspect of the case was that when the police went to Martin's home, the place was a mess. There was just toys and junk and dog feces and all sorts of rubbish everywhere. The whole house was crowded and untidy except for one room. That one room was clear except for a table and two chairs. And on that table were publications of military magazines and firearm magazines. So presumably that room was a clear space for someone to be able to clear their head. And my question is, who was the other chair for? Thank you for joining us for this episode of the WASP Files. Feel free to share far and wide and see the attached files in support of the episode. Thank you.